This year, we had more than 1,300 franchises apply to be on the Franchise 500. We looked closely at all of them. We crunched the numbers. People always ask, you cannot buy your way onto this list. You cannot buy your way up this list. This is a purely numbers-driven product. And then what you see is what you get, which is top to bottom, from number 100 to 500, the strongest franchise brands in the country. And we're talking about everything from, the big guns, the Jersey Mikes of the world, down to really small, even somewhat new franchises with very reasonable, price points to buy into. This is something for everybody.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of FranCoach's Franchisee 101 podcast. I am Tim Parmeter, founder and CEO of FranCoach and your podcast host. Today is what's going to turn it out to the now fifth annual episode where we are talking to Jason Feifer, editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, to discuss, this is their annual issue, the Franchise 500 edition of their magazine. Just absolute packed with great information, great stories, about the franchising industry. So we've got Jason coming on here again today to talk to us about some of the things we should be paying attention to, we should looking at. And really, I'm just going to tell you right now before we get in is listen to the podcast first and then go get this at magazine, wherever you find your magazines, because it is fantastic. So we're going to get to Jason here in a second. First, quick reminder of who we are at FranCoach. FranCoach is the premier franchise consulting firm. Our number one goal is to properly educate you on franchise ownership to determine if you should own one. And if so, we're going to help you find your absolute best fit. Our educational approach ensures we focus on the client's best interest. We are not here to sell you a franchise. In fact, we don't sell anything. Finding the best franchise to own is an incredibly personalized and individualized process that can only work with a team of experts focused on what is truly most important. That's you. FranCoach, our services are always 100% free to use, so reach out to our team. Click the QR code or find us at francoach.net. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, folks, we are back on the Franchising 101 podcast, and joining us for, amazingly, the fifth straight year is from Entrepreneur Magazine, the editor-in-chief, Mr. Jason Feifer. Jason, how are you?
I am great. I cannot believe it has been 5 years. Tim, possibly this is the most times I've been on anyone's podcast, so I am honored.
Me too, for having you back so many years. You are now officially eligible for the FranCoach smoking jacket, so we'll get that sent out to you. So
that's great.
I know.
Yeah,
it's you want to wear that around town.
This is like my Steve Martin hosting SNL moment that I'm back so many times that it's not even special anymore, but it's great to be here.
Yes. Glad we're doing this. And before we came on, it did take just a tiny bit of effort to come up with this, but this is the 47th straight year of Entrepreneurs Franchise 500 edition of their magazine, which is officially out now. So if you don't have a subscription to Entrepreneur, what the hell is wrong with you?
That's right.
Sign up. But wherever you can buy those good old fashioned magazines, they're everywhere and always a great read. So thanks for coming on. And just maybe, I guess it's possible and that somebody hasn't listened to every single podcast episode we've done, and certainly all of ours. But maybe there's a first timer here listening to us talk about this. What the heck is the Franchise 500 edition of the magazine? What's this all about?
Sure. So for 47 years, and you said, indeed, we had to, you and I had to search around to find that until I realized that we had put it actually on the spine of the magazine. The Franchise 500 for 47 years has been the industry's most definitive, authoritative ranking of franchises. Now, what Entrepreneur does is takes a look at 150 something data points about individual franchises. And we're talking everything here from the obvious visible things like size and growth and all of that, number of units, but then the otherwise invisible parts that are so important franchisee support and marketing and systems and the kind of nitty gritty stuff that you don't see when you just walk into a Wingstop or something, but you sure do experience if you become a franchisee. And that's the goal here, is we want to understand what brands are doing the best, not just in business, but in serving and partnering with and supporting their franchisees so that we can create a guide, a resource for anybody who's looking to get into franchising. So this year we had more than 1,300 franchises apply to be on the Franchise 500. And, we looked closely at all of them. We crunched the numbers. People always ask, you cannot buy your way onto this list. You cannot buy your way up this list. This is a purely numbers-driven product. And then what you see is what you get, which is top to bottom, from number 100 to 500, the strongest franchise brands in the country. And we're talking about everything from, the big guns, the Jersey Mikes of the world, down to really small, even somewhat new franchises with very reasonable, price points to buy into. This is something for everybody.
Yeah. So all of those data points, 150 plus of those, clearly this takes some time and some human capital to do this. How long does it take to kind of gather and go through all of this to come up with the ultimate, the ranking?
We're working on this basically year long, but the way in which it works is we look at, if I get this a little wrong, then somebody on my team, particularly Tracy, is going to kill me, but I'm going to say it and hopefully I'm right, which is that we look from the 12-month period that ends at the end of July. It could be June, but I think it's July. Yeah. And so the reason for that is because then we stop over the summer so that we have the next basically 6 months to process all that data and to produce the list that you then see. And so, this takes a lot of time and effort. We have an incredible team that is dedicated to doing this. Tracy Stapp-Harold, who I just shouted out, has been on the team for so long and has been shepherding this thing for I don't want to take a stab at exactly how long she's been doing it, but it's been a very long time. And she has such institutional memory about these brands and how they operate and what the list has evolved into. And we're constantly evolving the way in which we weigh those 150 data points. Because, it's when social media was brand new, strength of a brand's social media presence didn't really matter. Now, social media drives real business. And so the brands that do social media really well are the ones that are gaining a lot of consumer awareness and are able to drive consumers to their local franchisees. And so that kind of data point then becomes more important. So we're always rejiggering and rethinking with a lot of care and attention how we're evaluating these companies.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like almost a year. Like your team doing this is basically like Santa Claus. Like, okay, well then you take a breath for a couple of days. The magazine came out, and then it's going to be almost very soon. And now they're back at it for the next year with all of those things, which is pretty impressive. And so you talked about how those data points can change, right? Because 47 years ago, I'm pretty sure, like you said, social media wasn't one of them, right?
No,
what's the web presence, right? So,
right.
But that also happens with kind of the different industries, and then there's subcategories and little niches within there. How have you seen that kind of change, even maybe just over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so subcategories, which is truly the least interesting and least sexy word you've ever heard, but subcategories have weirdly become my favorite part of this thing every year. And I'm sure you and I have talked about subcategories on past editions of this podcast. And so here's the thing. We organize this list so that it's not just 1 through 500, but you can also start to look at it by category. So if pets are something that's interesting to you, then you can find the pet care section and look at what brands are there. That's the reason we do this, to try to make it as easy to navigate as possible. And of course, franchising is an industry, but it is also a reflection of the broader economy. And so as trends take hold in the broader ecosystem of business, they start to get reflected in franchising. People start to see opportunities to build inside of particular niches. And so as those shifts happen, we have to start creating subcategories to better organize the new brands that we're seeing show up on the list. And then that can tell you a lot about either what's growing, because we can see there's more brands showing up in a certain subcategory and those brands are getting larger, or that we have to create entirely new subcategories in order to accommodate them. So this year, for example, we saw a lot of growth in financial services, in children's businesses, and in personal care businesses. I think it's interesting. Health and wellness, which you're going to see throughout the broader economy. And, frankly, as a guy who comes from the world of media, the boom, everybody's, I'm sure, seen it, in health and wellness podcasts and health and wellness YouTube and health and wellness everything. Well, you see that in franchising as well, where health and wellness, the brands in that category, there are 34 of them. They rose. 8 now landed in the top 100, which is evidence of a really strong demand. And then we also had to, because health and wellness is such a bustling category, we had to add 3 new subcategories there. So we now have subcategories for hormone replacement therapy franchises, mobility products and services franchises, and urgent primary care clinics franchises. So, that goes to show you how once there's something often proven out in the broader economy, people recognize there's an opportunity to build a great repeatable system that can deliver, consistent value for consumers, build recognizable brands nationwide or even globally, and then create great opportunities for franchisees.
So the health and wellness space, and again, as a consumer, right? We can see it. There are more and more things everywhere, and then so some of those other kind of subcategories you're talking about. Have there been any newer categories that have popped up that somebody might go, wait, what? Or not even realize maybe that was a category out there? A little bit different with the health and wellness.
Sure. Well, so here are a couple. Networking groups is a new subcategory for this year. Sign maintenance and installation, indoor air quality services, skincare, recreational tours, virtual reality, and the other one that we had to add this year was senior transition / relocation services. So, look, some of these it's kind of obvious. Senior transition and relocation services, for example. I recently saw a number, I could have it a little bit wrong, but that I think there are 80 now I'm saying it. Well, you know what? I'm just going to take it back, and I'm just going to say we're all very aware of the silver tsunami, which is coming, which is something that you hear talked a lot about in terms of baby boomers who built local businesses who are now reaching retirement age, and those businesses are going to come up for sale. And I'm sure that is going to be true for franchises as well, where a lot of franchises are going to come up for sale. So, as there's an aging population, it makes total sense that some really smart entrepreneurs would have built and grown franchises in the senior transition and relocation services space. But then, there's also really fun, interesting ones like sign maintenance and installation. And you start to think to yourself, well, why? Why now? Or is there a bunch of sign maintenance and installation brands? And now I haven't looked specifically into this, so this is just a hypothesis, but it's a fun one to think about. And the thing that first comes to mind for me is social media, is the importance of having a business where the signage looks excellent so that it can appear really strongly in your digital presence. And maybe you want people to take photos outside, or you want people to see it or recognize it, or even recognize it on Google Street View or something. And so there's an increased emphasis on having really excellent signage. And where there is demand, there will always be a franchisor to meet it.
Yeah, no, I love that, and that side of it. And I think the other piece is there's a handful of sign related franchises that we work with, and now there are a couple of the ones that are doing the maintenance and installation, and it kind of a little bit came from the more of the gig economy piece of, like, instead of hiring people that are going to do it, I'm going to find the person that's their gig on the side, which also then as a franchise owner lowers your overhead a little bit, because I don't have to have Bob's sitting over here as my sign installer, but I don't have 40 hours of work for him just yet, right? And so it's
again, that's really interesting. So the shift, in other words, what you're saying is that kind of the shift in like labor structure is enabling these kind of more niche franchises where there's demand, but there might not be the kind of consistent demand that would enable somebody to hire a team to do this full time. But if you can have a more flexible system of staffing, then you can meet different kinds of demand, and therefore you can start to build franchises that support that.
Yeah, and keep anything we can do as a business owner, keep the overhead as low as possible, as lean as possible, but still have that quality component to it. So that's where, and again, talking to some of the sign franchises where they've kind of shifted, and one of the franchises was really kind of a sister of, like, the maintenance was a sister of one of the sign brands, is kind of getting it from that standpoint. So again, all those different things that you didn't see, even that one probably even last year, let alone several years ago. Do you guys track things that start to drop off a little bit over time?
That's a great question. Tracy is definitely aware of it because she's watching this stuff all the time. It's not something that we tend to publish because we're so focused on where the opportunity is rather than where the opportunity isn't. But if you look back at issues of the Franchise 500 from decades ago, you see some real fun stuff, right? You see major competition inside of video rental as a category. You see major competition in tanning salons, just the kind of stuff that either we've moved on from for one reason or another, or that technology has completely made, uninteresting. And so you'll see that across time as things come and they go, but we haven't published it, and we probably should. It would be fun.
Well, and not to, I like the fact that this is focused on the positivity side of things, right? So not that it's negative that Blockbuster went away. It's just, or those type of things have gone away over time, but there is always that little bit of a shift with things. As you are looking at this and kind of building all of this out, I think one of the other things that's always really cool in the magazine is some of the stories that you have, and some of the trends, but even just being able to kind of focus on whether it's a leader in a brand or franchise owners in brands, and not to give it away where we're not going to buy it and read it, but maybe what's a peek at a couple kind of those cool, fun stories that you have in this edition.
Oh, sure. Well, you know what? Actually, before I'll answer that, but I'm really curious for your take as someone who's so deep in the franchise space, to pick up on something that we were just talking about a second ago, which is things that come and things that go. Because something that we certainly do see, even if we don't make a big deal of it, is there will often be a little boomlet inside of a specific kind of service, let's say, that I'm hesitating to use the word trend because a trend means that something comes and it goes, but sometimes that's what they prove themselves to be is trends. I'll give you an example. Is a number of years ago, there was a real race into the paint and sip category. These franchises, and then there were lots of independent studios that did it too. But essentially what they do is they welcome you in and you come for an evening of painting a painting and either BYOB or, they're serving wine or something like that. And there were a bunch of franchises that sprung up, and they it's not to say that they've disappeared, but the energy in that space has certainly shifted. And now you're seeing that, like, what a lot of those franchises have now supplemented their offering with different kinds of crafts. For example, sign making became a thing, not sign making like, on top of your door, but like a little thing that you might put in your kitchen. And so I've always wondered, and Tim, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I bet listeners would too, of what your guidance is for someone who's considering buying into a franchise that seems to be a part of a trend, which is to say there's growth happening right now, but I don't know exactly what this is going to look like 5 years from now, because it's not like an Ace Hardware or some kind of utility that we just know everyone's always going to need.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the beauty of this is that finding the best franchise is so individualized and personalized. And there may be somebody that is really, hey, I want to be on the forefront of this wave. I may write it for 5 years, but it's got a great 5 years, right?
Right.
And then I can be on to the next thing too. The very next person might go, oh no, like I need the most stable, recession resistant thing ever. And when people, and again, it's easy to do anywhere you go looking online, entrepreneur or wherever, you get caught up in the industry, or I've always done this, therefore I should do it. It's usually quite different in the end, and tends to be more of those intangible things of just, hey, where's my risk tolerance of this particular brand or this particular industry in its life cycle, right? Like plumbing. Okay, well, guess what? That's never going to go away. That paint and sip thing, we've started to see some things that are comparable, but now from a cooking perspective, right? And so it's still right. It's still that kind of experiential type of thing. But to me, it's the beauty of it, because it really allows people to find what's best for them. And it's okay if you don't want the trendy new thing, because there's the stable, unsexy, recession resistant thing that's been here for 100 years and vice versa.
That's great. That's great perspective. I really appreciate that. And then, it's also worth thinking about that the franchises that live inside of categories that may boom and bust could still be serving a need that doesn't go away. And it's just about making sure that you're understanding the shift in either your consumer or in how to deliver that service in the most economical way. And so here I'll give you an example, which is a company that really jumped out at me on the list this year, given something that I literally just said like 3 minutes ago, was glow tanning. So remember, I just said, you go back decades ago and there were tanning salons all over the place in Franchise 500. And now you don't really see it, but glow tanning, which is GLO tanning, by the way, they were not ranked last year. And this year they're number 328. And as you know, it's really interesting. So we talked to them about what is driving this growth and learned a couple of really interesting things I'll tell you about, which just gives you an insight into how a business like this can operate. So the tanning industry peaked around the mid 90s, and it's significantly smaller today, but it's serving the same demographic that was using them in the mid 90s. So at this point, the average consumer is a 51-year-old woman. And so, right. And they like their tanning salons, and they're there, and there's a demand for it. And now you get to serve them in a more cost-efficient way. Labor costs are lower because a lot of the equipment is automated, so you don't need as many people running that tanning salon. They gave an example, which is that they used to need humans to serve as spray tan artists, but now that's, and that makes that service hard to expand if you're running a kind of manual spray tan business. But now glow tanning just has a spray tan machine. So a client just sets their preference and everything is automated. And this kind of stuff enables a brand like this to grow, and they really are growing. I mean, so they've been in business for 16 years. It began franchising in 2020. It only had 16 locations back then, all corporate owned. Today, including franchises, there are 105 locations and 30 slated to open earlier this year. So that's like this super interesting to see a business in a category that a lot of people would have said is dead, but is identified an existing demand by a consumer. It's unmet, and there's new technology that can make it more efficient to run that business.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I think that kind of fall into that, where it's like you think maybe it's gone away and maybe it's not as popular or talked about as much, and they can kind of find a way to you got to be able to adapt in some way. Right. I mean, every business, and I want to get to kind of what was number one this year, because I know some things with them, how they have continued to grow and evolve. And we talked either last year or the year before, because it was the same one for a couple of years with Taco Bell, even being as big and as strong of a brand as they were, they made some big changes internally, right? And to continue to have that growth trajectory and stay relevant with that. So I think that's always kind of key. There's again, some of those things that you think are unsexy that I had somebody recently, and there's a handful of franchises that do this, but the packing and shipping type of thing, right?
Sure.
And literally somebody made a comment like, oh, well, people don't like mail things anymore. But
they do.
Right. I may not mail a letter. Like, let me write Jason a letter today and put a stamp on it and send it in the mail. but I sure as hell buy things online and need to send them back and all of this. So it's just kind of evolved, or they've turned into more, how do we help? Now there's more small business owners or more people with that gig economy have some business services that they need in those situations. So having that evolution of something, or the other one we were just talking to somebody about today, dry cleaning. Well, I don't know, maybe you have a suit in your closet somewhere, right? But we don't have, 15 of them, and we're not wearing suit and ties every day to work. So dry cleaning, it's still there, but it's morphed into more overall cleaning because we're all lazy. And so wait, somebody will do that for me and I can drop it off and pick it up, or you can deliver it or whatever. Right. So that how some of those older brands have just evolved over time is kind of fun to see. And I'm sure you guys see a ton of that as you're going through all the research.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much of that. And when we investigate how these brands either remain relevant or take large leaps on the list, this is often what we're seeing, is that they've identified an opportunity for growth by really understanding their consumer. I mean, I think that I'm going to make a really big, bold statement that possibly I can't fully stand behind, but I feel good about it as it's coming out of my mouth, which is that if you want to truly understand whether a business is built to last, you have to see how well they understand their consumer. Because the businesses that truly deeply understand their consumer are deeply in touch with that consumer, are always talking to that consumer. And I don't just mean casually, they come into the store and you chat with them, like that's nice. But I mean like true consumer research. Those are the ones that are going to last because they understand who that consumer is. They understand how they think. Right. You'd mentioned Taco Bell, which had been number one on our list for many years, is not this year. They're number two this year, but they have this understanding of their consumer, at a real psychological level. They think of them as cultural rebels. And so they want to know what drives cultural rebels, what kind of marketing engages cultural rebels, what makes Taco Bell feel like a place for them that solves a problem for them. And then Taco Bell is constantly exploring what it can do to re-engage those folks, to partner with the people in pop culture or the brands in pop culture that those cultural rebels love. Last year, I was talking to Sean Tresvant, the CEO of Taco Bell, and he was telling me about how they'd rolled out this collab with Taco Bell and Cheez-Its. And it came with, I don't know, if anyone has ordered this and they know what I'm talking about, it came with this like comically large Cheez-It. And I said, because here, look, I'm just like an old guy now who doesn't know this. Well, I'm 45, but I said, like, why Cheez-It? Like, what's going on with Cheez-It? And he said to me, as if it should be obvious, which I guess he said, Cheez-It is Gen Z's number one snack brand, which I had no idea. Wow. Isn't that crazy? I had no idea. Cheez-It was like, when I was growing up, it was around, it was fine, but it didn't have the cultural resonance it apparently does today. So, but Taco Bell knows that. They know that because they know exactly who their audience is and they know what else their audience loves. And they are going to make damn sure that they are always relevant to that space. So the better the better a brand understands their audience, the more you should want to be a part of that brand.
Yeah, no. And I remember there was something with them too, where they've really listened to their customer of like, wait, why'd you take that away? We want that back. And listen and doing that. Right. So leads us to kind of like the little drum roll, but like,
sure.
Talk about who's number one, but talk about some of the things that really got them there this year.
Sure. So number one is Jersey Mike's. This is their first time at the number one spot on the list. Boy, they were really excited when I reached out to tell them. And look, Jersey Mike's is going through a massive transition right now. So, anybody who has followed franchising or Jersey Mike's, knows this story that this guy. So Jersey Mike's is started out as a tiny sub shop, and then this young kid was working at Jersey Mike's. His name is Peter Cancro, and then he bought the company and then spent the next 50 years basically growing it into the brand that you know. And then in November of 2024, he sold the brand to private equity firm Blackstone for, sit down for this, $8 billion with a B. And so good on Peter. And and then a few months later, announced that he was stepping down, and the new CEO, who started, I guess, in April of 2025, is a guy named Charlie Morrison, who was the CEO of Wingstop, which he grew from fewer than 500 to now to more than 2,000 locations. And he was also the CEO of Salad to Go, where he grew their store count sevenfold. And, I asked Charlie, like, did you set out to be a franchise executive? And he was like, absolutely not. Like, never expected this, but just kind of stumbled into it. Turns out he was really good at it, and he loves these brands. And so, he tells me, look, we're at 3,200 stores now, Jersey Mike's is, and we could probably double that in the US. And then there's a huge opportunity overseas. So, like Peter, Charlie, the new CEO, told me very flatly, he cannot and will not take credit for the Franchise 500 number one ranking here, because he was barely on the team for the time in which we were ranking it. But, he is coming in as a representative of this shift. I mean, this is now a brand owned by a massive private equity firm. They are pumping money into this thing. They are slamming the gas on growth. And Charlie said that his mission is to guide that growth while also being extremely mindful. And we spent a lot of time talking about this, extremely mindful of what made this brand special in the first place and making sure that that doesn't change. And he said he has seen many brands, and he wouldn't name names, as any smart executive won't. But he says he's seen many brands that sacrifice either quality or that connection to their consumer or whatever it was that used to make them special, sacrifice that in the name of growth, and it never works out. And so he wants to do this differently. And this is a brand that is really poised for massive, massive growth, but he wants to make sure that it's done right. And it'll be very interesting to watch.
That's no easy feat like, you're not just taking over as a CEO of some random company. That's a pretty big chunk of change somebody just bought this brand for, right, to do this. And so you talked about kind of understanding how important it is to understand your audience and your customer. Did you get a sense in talking to them kind of what they are doing to be able to kind of understand what that customer is so they can continue to grow and thrive?
Oh, yeah. Well, so first, it starts not just with the customer. Well, I mean, actually, as I say this, I realize it does start with the customer, because if you're a franchise, then your customer is the franchisee in a way. And your partner is too, but this is who you've sold the brand to. And so Charlie said that one of the very first things that he did is he went on, and it continues to go on a listening tour, making sure that he's really connecting with and hearing those franchisees, and what are they concerned about? What are they focused on? If they say, like he gave me some example of, I can't remember it exactly, but they were like, look, the shirts that the team members have to wear right now, like, get dirty too fast or something. Like, can we just change these and be, they're just like, yeah, sure, right. Like, if that makes things easier for you, then let's do that. The thing that I really loved that I'll be thinking about a lot is, so Charlie has a question box outside of his office that he encourages anybody to drop questions into. And then he has these all hands meetings with the company where he has his assistant or whoever bring the box over, and he has not opened the box. He has not looked at the questions. And then he pulls them all out and reads them for the first time and answers them all in front of everybody. And I really love that he does that, but he also does it. It's a piece of theater, but I think it's a very effective piece of theater, because what he's showing them is, I'm not going to give you a filtered, practiced version of me. I'm going to give you the unfiltered version, right? Like, you've got a question. I don't need to spend time coming up with the answer that will please you. I'm just going to tell you, what the answer is. Because what he ultimately wants to do is build trust. So he's doing that with his, with his team. I am very sure, we didn't actually talk about this, but I'd be shocked if a brand like Jersey Mike's doesn't have a really sophisticated program to, gather and process consumer insight. And I know that he's really he's really focused on look, how does this brand grow while maintaining what is so special about it? And I think he also understands that the people on the ground, the individual franchisees, carry so much knowledge about what makes this brand special to their local communities. So, I'll just give you just read a little bit of what he's telling me. I said, what if people asked you? And he said, and just reading directly from this conversation that I had, he said, change is the biggest challenge on everybody's mind. What can we do to avoid anything that ultimately degrades the concept? There's this misperception that private equity will do that, and I'm trying to ease the anxiety around that. I think building that trust and having that conversation with them directly helps. But there were also lots of changes happening even before Blackstone showed up or Peter sold the company. Franchisees were saying, hey, can we slow the pace? Some of it was just about new product related ideas, like adding a sauce or a dressing or something for the subs that seemed to be like, is this really moving the organization forward? And, Tim, I'm sure you hear this all the time, and I certainly do too, especially as I do keynotes at franchisee conventions for different franchises. Is they're telling me the reason they have me come in because my subject area is change and change management and navigating change. And that's the thing that people are always concerned about. It's always a tug of war with franchisees and franchisors, where the franchisor wants to evolve the brand as anybody does. And the franchisees, especially the older ones, are going to say, hey, wait a second, like I've been doing it like this a long time and it works, and stop changing it on me. And that's an inherent tension in any brand. And certainly a guy coming in this moment of massive change has to be thinking about that a lot.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that they're seeing it as two different customers. There's the customers that come in and give them the money, right? But also really as a franchisor, the customer is also your franchise owners. And if you're not going to speak to them, listen to them, my wife Danielle and I were at the multi-unit franchise conference last March. I think it was March. And we just happened to meet somebody with one of the executives with Jersey Mike's. And they were telling me they do a thing, talk about kind of that listening to your internal customer, where they have they basically give a franchise to a manager, right? So there's all this competition and voting for it or whatever. And then, but it's basically based on that manager's performance wherever they are. And they're giving that, and then talking about how incredibly successful those people have been when given that opportunity, and just how proud of the brand they are with it. And again, I'm like, in the grand scheme of things, for somebody like Jersey Mike's, does it really dent the pocketbook to absorb the cost for that? No, not at all. But now you're just, the amount of buy-in and all the other managers and employees everywhere, like, oh my gosh, that could be me someday, and have that opportunity. And I was really taken back by the fact that they had that in place. And I'm like, and even hearing like the whole process of it and what the award was like, and what just kind of a moving opportunity that was. But again, really being in tune to what's going on internally, and not just top down going, nope, this is what we're doing, deal with it.
Yeah, I really love that mindset. And Charlie and I also talked about, at first he was telling me about all the different things that they were doing to increase the profitability at a individual unit level, right? Like really thinking about the unit economics and really thinking about efficiency, so that they can roll out changes that make every unit more profitable. And at first that just sounded like good business, but then later he was telling me about how Jersey Mike's really wants to be turning to its existing franchisees to expand and buy more franchises. And when he said that, I said, oh, but now I really understand your incentive to increase the profitability at a unit level, because what you want is to show these existing franchise owners, hey, we are here to make you more money, because if you do that, then you're going to buy more franchises, and then that's good for the brand. That creates this whole flywheel effect where everything grows and everybody grows together. And that is a really wonderful way for a brand to be thinking. Yeah,
no, I love that. I want to throw one last thing at you and kind of be respectful of your time, but this is loaded question a little bit because there's so many different things, but there's one thing that maybe you wanted to share before we got off, whether it's the Franchise 500, just your experience seeing it over the years. But I'm going to open it up to you for like, what's one last thing you might want somebody to think about as they're kind of going into this magazine or thinking about franchising?
Oh, wow. Well, I'll tell you, many years ago, I was hired to give a talk at the Dream Vacations. It was Dream Vacations at the Dream Vacations franchisee convention, which, appropriately so for a travel agency franchise, took place on a cruise. So, so I went. I was on this cruise and I spoke to the team, and they were lovely. And then I went to this reception or party or whatever it was afterwards, and this woman came up to me, one of the Dream Vacations franchisees. And she was holding a copy of Entrepreneur Magazine. And I'm pretty sure it was the Franchise 500 issue. Though we run lists in every issue, but I think it was the Franchise 500. And she said, I saw that you were going to be speaking here. And so I brought this on the cruise because I just had to show you. And she flips open to the page in this magazine from, ages ago, long before I was an entrepreneur. Like I'd never seen this copy of the magazine before. And she gets to the page where there was lists of franchises to buy, where she had circled all those years ago Dream Vacations, and then went and pursued it and became a Dream Vacations franchisee, and is having an amazing time and an amazing life. And
that's awesome.
And she said it all started by finding this thing in a list in a magazine, and that really brought this work home to me, because it's very easy to just get into the treadmill of this if you're making it. You had asked me earlier, Tim, how long does it take us to do this? And, it's like we basically 6 months since we closed the data collection, but where the data collection takes another 6 months. The whole thing is a year-long project. And so you're just always working on the next one and working on the next one. You're publishing a thing, and we talk about it, and then we move on. But for people like perhaps the people who are listening right now, who are thinking about whether to buy a franchise, this is a resource that could change their life and change the course of their finances and how they think about themselves and how they feed their family. And that is very, very significant. And I try to remember that so that these things don't just become lists to me. And so, if anybody's interested in having that moment for themselves, obviously you can just go to the newsstand, right now, go to your local Barnes and Noble or whatever, and find the January issue of Entrepreneur Magazine. You can't miss it. It says Franchise 500 very large on the front, or go to entrepreneur.com/franchise 500, and you can get the list.
There we go. Love it. And thank you as always, Jason. Thank you so much for coming on, for doing this again. And just in case you haven't gotten enough of Jason Feifer and the Franchise 500 for Entrepreneur, he's going to be on TV tomorrow night. He's super important on the Franchising 360 show, joining Danielle and I there, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Biz TV. So this is the week of Entrepreneur, Franchise 500, and Jason Feifer. Jason, my friend, thanks for joining us again.
Tim, it is a delight to talk to you every year. And, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I'll
see you next year.
If you have me back, I look forward to it. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks again for tuning into the Franchising 101 podcast brought to you by FranCoach. I hope these episodes continue to educate you on the amazing possibilities that can be achieved through franchise ownership. In between podcast episodes, if you still want to learn more about franchising and the ways in which FranCoach can help, there are a few places for you to check out. First, tune in to the Franchising 360 show. It is the only nationally syndicated television show about franchising, hosted by me and Danielle Wright. Our TV show airs every Friday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Biz TV. Next, check out the FranCoach YouTube channel, which is FranCoach for You. You can find tons of franchise-specific content there. Plus, you can catch past episodes of the Franchising 360 show. If you like to read, we encourage you to check out our book, Becoming a Franchise Owner. You'll never guess what it's about. And finally, when you're ready to take that first personalized step and explore the franchise industry further, please reach out to our amazing team at FranCoach. You can click the QR code or find us at francoach.net. There is never any fee for our service, so let us help you create your better tomorrow.